And welcome back, everybody. This is Rusty here with the Rugby Review, bringing you round one of the Six Nations Rugby Tournament. Taking a little break from domestic leagues and enjoying a little bit of international rugby right now. So the round one game schedule looked like this. We saw our very first ever Thursday night game in Six Nations history here. That took place February 5th between France and Ireland, and then Saturday we saw two games between Italy versus Scotland and England versus Wales. And here are the results for round one. So game one between France and Ireland saw France winning the game 36-14. Game two between Italy and Scotland was a super close game, where we saw Italy just get the victory by a score of 18-15. Game three between England and Wales was a bit of a one-sided affair, with England winning the game 48-7. So let's dive in and take a closer look at each one of these games, starting with the France and Ireland game. So again, this was a very strong performance for France across the entire 80 minutes. France was extremely dominant offensively, defensively, and at one point in time you were a bit concerned for Ireland because it looked like the game was going to get very out of hand and be a very lopsided score. Again, France won by 22 points, so it was a big margin of victory there. But at one point in time, especially going into half, this looked like this could have been a 30 or a 40-point margin of victory for France on this game. But Ireland had a better second half than first half to keep the score from getting... Actually, the lead didn't grow at all. So, much better second half for Ireland to keep the lead the exact same as half. So if we look a little closer at the stats here, we can see possession plus territory slightly favored towards France. Nothing huge, nothing crazy here. Tackles made was pretty comparable by both teams. And then one thing that probably did the Irish in a little bit was they missed 35 of their tackles, and France missed only 21 in comparison. One stat that kind of shows how good France was on offense this particular game is the post-contact meters. Compared to Ireland, they just had a huge number. So France had 392 post-contact meters to 265 for Ireland. So, Ireland, yes, was moving the ball up and down the field when they had their chances, but France was just doing it with much more ease and much more regularity throughout this game, as you can see by the big difference in post-contact meters. Now, one thing that interested me, kind of going through this stat line here, was to see how many handling errors that both teams had. Again, it was a bit rainy for this game, so it does make sense that there were a lot of handling errors. But 22 handling errors for each team, and France was still able to be just so dominant with their win. It's pretty impressive. Again, just one more thing, or two more stats here, I should say, to kind of emphasize how strong of a game France had this particular week. Let's look at defenders beaten and see how many clean breaks that translated to. So France had 35 defenders beaten, and that translated into 13 clean breaks. That is a very good conversion ratio for the French there. And, they took every advantage they had with these clean breaks this week. Versus Ireland had 21 defenders beaten, and that only translated into 5 clean breaks. That's significantly less than what France was doing. So, again, it was just really strong game by France this week, and then Ireland will definitely be looking to bounce back in round two. Our second game of the week here was the closest game of the week between Italy and Scotland. Again, Italy just eked out the victory here, 18-15. I will say this game was played in horrendous conditions. I think it was maybe like the first 10-15 minutes of the game was okay, and then it just started bucketing down rain. There were puddles forming on the field, so, it wasn't, there was a lot of stop and start because of how many handling errors there were between everybody. And then Italy's really lucky. They got all of their scoring done early in the game because there was not much scoring done later in the game, and whatever scoring was done later in the game was very hard earned by either team. With all of that being said, this was a really, really, really strong performance defensively by Italy. Italy did not shy away from the contact for 80 minutes. They were hitting, sticking, and stopping Scotland's offensive flow for the entirety of the game. So what we'll see is Scotland dominated offensive stats, Italy dominated defensive stats, and, this game could have gone either way, but it edged towards the Italians this week. So let's take a closer look here. And again, we have Scotland in the light purple ink, Italy in the black ink. Scotland, again, played a very good game. They were dominant in possession, dominant in territory, but the defensive effort by Italy throughout this whole game was just top-notch. So, again, possession, territory, in favor towards the Scots. But look at that tackles made. This is an absolute massive difference between the two teams. Italy had to make 224 tackles to just 94 for Scotland. Absolutely insane just how much of a difference that is and how heavily Italy relied on their defense. Just really strong performance by Italy on defense again. And despite Italy having a lack of possession plus territory throughout this entire game, not as big of a difference in post-contact meters as one would imagine. Scotland has 61% possession to just 39% for Italy, yet Italy had 204 post-contact meters and Scotland had 268. So a huge difference in possession between the two teams, but didn't really lead to a strong meters gained advantage for the Scots this particular game. As we move down here, in all honesty, I'm surprised there weren't more turnovers lost between the two teams this week with how much rain there was. Again, the fact that there was only this amount of handling errors in the amount of rain that was there, absolutely insane. But a lot of turnovers lost, but again, it was a huge downpour. 18 turnovers lost for Italy, 11 for Scotland. The 18 turnovers lost for Italy probably also contributes to the amount of defense that they had to play this particular week. But one thing to really look at to see which team took advantage of their opportunities, defenders beaten, and how many clean breaks did that translate to. Italy only had 12 defenders beaten, and that translated to 5 clean breaks for them. Scotland had 21 defenders beaten, but no clean breaks. Despite the possession, despite the territory advantage, despite Italy having many more handling errors than Scotland, again, this Italian defense this week, Herculean effort, didn't give up any clean breaks despite some missed tackles here. Whereas on the other hand, Italy was able to make some clean breaks from missed tackles by Scotland. Strong win by Italy. Unfortunate loss by Scotland, but they do walk away with a bonus point, so we'll see how that helps them as the weeks go on with this particular, or in this tournament here. So our last game was the most lopsided of the week. was England versus Wales. I will say this was a very dominant first half and a strong second half. It kind of looked like England took their foot off the gas a little bit in the second half because it seemed like England kind of knew that they were going to win. But at the same point in time, Wales did also have a bit better of a second half as well. So let's zoom in here, and not going to be too surprised by any of these stats here. Again, England was the much stronger team across the entire 80 minutes. Wales struggled with discipline, 4 yellow cards. It was just a real discipline issue for Wales this week. That's all you can really say. Possession plus territory in favor towards England this week, putting pressure on Wales to make a little bit more tackles, playing a little bit more defense. You can see that with the tackles made. Wales made 151 tackles to England's 132. And if you look down at post-contact meters, you can see how strong offensively England was this particular week. They gained over 100 more post-contact meters than Wales did. England had 330 post-contact meters to 224 for Wales. Now, as we slide down here, I was kind of surprised with all the handling errors because it didn't really seem like there were that many handling errors during the course of this game, but each team had north of 10, which is kind of a lot compared to what you see domestically. So 14 turnovers or 14 handling errors for England, 12 handling errors for Wales. Penalties conceded, and this is really where Wales hurt themselves this week. 16 penalties conceded for Wales to just 12 for England. Something tells me that England mentally shut off a little bit, and that's why their penalty count went up a bit. But Wales, it was a pattern throughout the whole game. They were just making a lot of silly errors, silly penalties, and then it just kept mounting and mounting and mounting to the point where they got numerous yellow cards, being down, it was 13 against 15 numerous times during the course of the game. Yeah, so it's Wales kind of doing it to themselves really this week. To kind of emphasize England being a strong offensive team despite the ill discipline for Wales. Let's look at defenders beaten to clean breaks again. This is like the theme this week. Defenders beaten was actually almost the same between the two. 23 defenders beaten for England, 21 for Wales. However, England was much more efficient and effective with their line breaks and clean break opportunities. England took 23 defenders beaten and made 12 clean breaks out of it, whereas Wales, with 21 defenders beaten, that only translated into 6 clean breaks for them. So again, this was a really strong game by England, and Wales really just needs to get their discipline in check, and that'll hopefully keep the scoreline a little bit closer coming into the next round. And speaking of which, let's look at round 2's game schedule here. So this week does not see any games played on Thursday. We have 2 games played on Valentine's Day this week, February 14th. We're going to see Ireland versus Italy, which this will be a very important game for Ireland to see if they can have a good bounce-back game. And then, obviously, for Italy, they want to go 2-0 and try to really upset Ireland this up-and-coming week. And then the second game on Valentine's Day is a huge matchup here. We have the Calcutta Cup between Scotland and England. And then on Sunday, February 15th, we see Wales versus France. And now let's look at the standings. So as of right now, England is atop the leaderboard, and the only reason why they're atop the leaderboard is because of the big points differential that was had in the Welsh game. So you have England and France top of the leaderboard, 5 points apiece. Italy coming in at number 3, having scored 4 points this past week. Scotland is at number 4. They picked up a losing bonus point and have 1 point overall. And then we have Ireland at 5, Wales at 6, both no points yet. And the only reason why Ireland is 5, Wales is 6 is just, again, points differential there. So that's all for this week. Thank you all for stopping by. If you liked the video, hit that like button. If you liked the video enough, hit that subscribe button. And check out other videos I have posted for other rugby competitions. Have a good one, and I will see you next time.